So in other words, like what I'd like to be able to name things as is like this is the Ionian node, this is the Phrygian, and this is the Aeolian. So if you named by the nodes, then of course I should be able to move it forward. Now if I use the tablature, like if I wrote this in a DAW, and the DAW can see that I wrote this from the perspective of a certain collection of notes, which in this case is the A major, then it knows that that's the Ionian, that's the Phrygian, that's the Aeolian. It should then be able to create tablature with the lower heavy E string on top, showing that this is going to be the 5th fret, 4th fret, 4th fret on these strings. And then I should be able to shift it forward, right? And now this is the Ionian, because now I'm in another collection of notes, which would be A sharp. So now the A sharp is the Ionian, Phrygian, Aeolian. If this was in a DAW system, it should be able to spit out the tablature saying that now we're going to start on the 6th, and then the 5th fret, and then the 5th fret. And then it moves up here. Now the 7 is the Ionian. I'm in the collection of notes around the B major. So this is the Ionian, Phrygian, Aeolian. This pattern has moved up. Now part of the problem with this, however, is that now I'm higher up on the guitar and I only have so much space going forward, right? So when I go, so if the song is going way out here past the 12th fret, then I'm going to end up with a problem because I need to utilize the space behind it. I'm going to run out of room. So in theory, if the guitar went on forever, I can just keep pushing this up. But in practice, I got to worry about, okay, if this is supposed to be the lowest note of the song, how far up can I push it? And then I have to deal with the other strings below it in order to do a similar thing. In other words, I could take this whole pattern and move it to this string, right? So now instead of playing at the 7, 6, 6, I could say it's at the 2, 1, 1, right? And then so, or this one goes up to the 8. So now I'm in C major collection. The C is the Ionian, Phrygian, Aeolian, but I might want to push that back down a string back here, 3rd fret down here, Ionian, Phrygian, Aeolian. So modern software should be able to generate tablature that could accommodate the shifting and then give you the exact fingering, that you can kind of play with so that you can play in any collection of 12 notes. So no mode rotation, harmonic logic. So remember, in a modern system, it's designed so that you should be able to write your entire song and then transpose it through all 12 collections of notes, as well as possibly rotate it to every modal perspective. There's 7 modal perspectives, changing the tonics upon rotation. That's a little bit more complex to do, but you should be able to do it. So the tab equals the shapes not theory. So you can copy licks, but you can't rotate scales through modes very easily. No way to label functions like Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian. So in other words, it's labeling just the numbers are representing just where you put your finger from an XY axis, meaning the number represents the frets, the X axis. So that means you can't really change it because you don't really know what the relative positions from a Nashville number system is. You can kind of move the shape up, but it would be nice if we can know the relative positions like Ionian, Dorian, or from a Nashville number system 1 through 7 so that we can easily transpose and rotate. Doesn't teach relationship, just static grids of numbers. Great for mimicry, weak for understanding. So the basic takeaway is, of course, the tab is a tool to just mimic the fingering. It's just mimicry. You're not learning anything really other than that. You're not learning like the note names. You're not learning the relative position, the scales, relative position. You're just mimicking the tune, and then you want to build. So that could have its purpose, but it's a limited purpose. So problems, upside down layout, just as a recap. So counterintuitive for most learners, meaning we should have the lower heavy E string on top. People will argue against that, but that's the way we've done it for 300 years. Yeah, we don't need to do it anymore because some idiot wrote it down. They weren't an idiot, okay? But they wrote it down that way because they had the guitar tab stuck in their head because they can't get out of piano-centric thinking. And so that's what we, and then they wrote, we can change it now because because we can change it. We have the ability. So we're not stuck in molasses anymore. We're not stuck in the molasses. Remember what happens? This happens with language too. Language used to change all the time. Then we wrote it down. The King James Bible is the King James Bible. If you don't talk like the king, right? And there's nothing wrong with it, with that way it was written down, but there might be better ways to say things, right? I mean, it might be the language would have changed if it hadn't been written down in a particular way, right? Similarly here, clearly in this case, we're not doing it in the optimal way, but it's been set in stone. It's been set in molasses, where the fossils are in the ground, but now it's becoming unfossilized, right? Because now it's becoming fluid again. We're going from a written society back to a verbal society, because now text is not king anymore, because now we have AI. We're going back to a vocal system, which means change is now on the table. Some things need to change. Guitar only, not transferable across instruments. That's the problem, but it has its purposes. Chord notation, messy, vague, can't show complex voicing. So as a tool of mimicry, it's best basically for melodies. Stacking, crude, not modular or logic. So again, stacking of chords gets kind of ugly on tablature. Absolute numbers, no instant transposition. So that's a problem. So that means that the tab's not going to be a solution for everything. Again, it's a mimicry for a specific thing. No modes, you can't rotate, show harmonic relationships. So the final takeaway, tabs teach fingers, not music. So again, that could have its purpose. There's nothing wrong with that, but that has a limited, obviously very limited purpose. So grid-based octave, so what we need are grid-based octave rows. So in other words, from a DAW perspective, we can have more information with the octaves. We can also compact that information to show everything in one row for one 12-octave situation. Relative Nashville numbers. So we would like to have a DAW system that can then be the master system that allows us 2 tabs or 2 dials, that being the relative number system, so I can transpose as well as rotate through the modal perspectives. Color code shape scale maps would be nice. Mode rotation tools. We should be able to rotate through the modes, changing the tonic as we do. Universal instrument agnostic system. So in other words, the guitar tab has its purpose for the guitar, but the DAW system now needs to be based so it's universal for all instruments, should be playing it. And I believe that the new instrument, which is going to be replacing what many people use the piano for as well as the guitar for, which is the thing that you use to compose, the thing that you use to play along as you're thinking through. You could still do that, but many people might just simply be using the computer. The data input on the computer should have the capacity to tinker in a more efficient way even than the piano, if we had the proper keyboard to data input into the system, which I don't think would be a piano, because the piano introduces a lot of music theory issues that people that didn't learn the piano don't need to learn that way, right? They should learn in the optimal way to do whatever they want to do.